This is Remote Ruby.
Have you any remote idea to the meaning of the word?
What up?
Yeah.
Hello.
It's just the three of us today.
Just the three of us.
Just the boys.
Yeah.
That went through my head immediately as well, but there was no way I was going to sing it. So
I mean, our editors can work some magic too, so.
that's fair enough.
Just the three of us. What's new with you guys?
All right. I'm just going to let you know. I'm going to curse. I've been taking the same medication for 5 or 6 years, right? Okay. 5 or 6 years. I need it to function. Okay. So I needed to get a prescription refill. I tried to get my refill and it was trying to send it to North Carolina. And I was like, why is it doing this? So I call Walgreens and I'm like, yo, can y'all just transfer it over to Phoenix where I live, where you've been filling my prescriptions for the past 4 months. 4 months. I've been getting my prescriptions at Walgreens in Phoenix. Okay. So I've laid the groundwork, right? They're like, no, we can't transfer it because it's a controlled substance. I understand. They're like, you have to call your doctor. Love that. Call my doctor on Monday. The first thing I found out when I couldn't get my prescription, I called my fucking doctor. I need my fucking medicine. At this point, I've been on my fucking medicine all week. Okay. And they're like, hey, so we can't help you anymore at all. Because the reason that we were allowed to keep prescribing you your fucking medicine is because there was this COVID law that allowed us to prescribe it to you. But now that's gone because the pandemic's over, apparently. I thought it was getting worse. Like, I read the news. Okay. But no, since you don't live here, we can't help you at all with anything. So now I have nothing. I have no medicine. I have no doctor and I have no leads on anyone.
You have to come in the office essentially, right?
They're like, we can't send it to Arizona. You have to be in North Carolina. And I can't get like my family to pick it up or anything.
Yeah.
Wow.
Damn.
Now I'm remembering what it's like to be me, and I don't like it.
Oh, that is rough.
Wow.
Some heavy right?
Yeah, I think we used all our editing budget on the first 10 minutes of just bleeping. I don't know that we can record much longer.
I'm sorry, Paul. I had to express myself.
No, that sucks. Is it worth it for you? I don't believe we're just talking about this on a podcast.
To fly to North Carolina?
Yes.
Yeah, I've had that thought, bro. And I'm not doing that. I'm not flying. Number one, I don't like flying. Number two, I'm not on my medicine. Do you want to know what it's like to try to get a fucking plane ticket when you like, how does a plane work? I didn't even know how my insurance works anymore. And I'll figure it out. I always do. But yeah, that's what's going on with me this week. So if I'm different and I talk really fast and I'm kind of jumping around a little bit, you know why? That I'm in a mood.
Well, you exist with us right now. And we can
That's true.
talk about your favorite programming language, JavaScript.
No. Oh, no.
It was a big week for JavaScript and Rails as well. So
for JavaScript and Rails, I followed. I can speak. But Jason,
I haven't,
how your week went.
It's about JavaScript. So,
Okay.
it was amazing, right?
Yeah.
You only have good experiences with JavaScript.
The best week ever. I don't know how we used that crap language for Ruby before. No, I am building like a pretty heavy JavaScript tool right now, like outside of work. And I lost like 9 hours last week just trying to set up bundling.
I've been there, friend.
What were you trying to use?
Okay, so we're still doing the store form thing, but before we finish building it, we're going to try and just focus on like some marketing stuff right now with me. So doing this very controversial thing, building the marketing site in Rails, because we're building some like free tools and stuff. And that's the best way I know how to like build stuff. But like one of the things is like a mockup generator. So it's very JavaScript heavy, right? So I'm using Inertia, React, and Tailwind. Okay. Those 3 tools. I use just-in-time Tailwind, so it runs through Webpacker, all that stuff. So I was like, I'm going to do Vite because I've been hearing a lot about it.
It's Vite. It's French.
Vite.
Yes.
Okay.
I always wondered that, so that's good to know.
It's Vite.
Vite. I'm using Vite. And if you're unfamiliar with Vite, It is built by the creator of Vue.js, which may be VJS. I may have been pronouncing it wrong too.
And you're using React on it.
Yes.
Bro.
You're really shaming him, huh?
You should see me over here just flexing. Anyway, so Vite is like an alternative to Webpack. Locally, when you're in development, it uses esbuild. And in production, it uses rollup. And there is this awesome library called Vite Ruby. It's super well documented. It looks like a joy to use. And so I fired up a Rails app, skip Sprockets, skip JavaScript, basically just like middle finger to assets. I get everything installed and I get like Vite in the console because when you load it up, if you inspect the console, it's like Vite connected. And I'm like, I am a god. I have done this. Didn't take me very long, like half hour. Could not get any type of reloading to work. Not like hot
Which makes
reloading,
sense.
just like clicking refresh. So I thought, okay, this is probably like some issue I don't understand. And I was trying to use inertia. In inertia, there's a little bit of difference because the docs talk about how to resolve it using Webpack specific stuff like require. So I went to Webpacker, tried and true, our trusty friend, went on the latest version 6. It's like release candidate 251 or something. Same thing. Turns out Safari is the problem in all this.
No.
But I'm like 5 hours deep. So then I'm like, but this worked in Webpacker beta 7, right? Between beta 7 and release candidate 6, they removed the content hash from the development file name, which Safari, since the file name was different, Safari always treated it as a new asset and would never cache it. But like even like Safari has this mode where you can be like ignore resource caching, still caches the style sheet.
Oh, love that.
Yeah.
So I went back to Vite.
That sounds like Vite. It sounds like they're sending an E tag.
Because correct me if I'm wrong, I wasted a few hours the other day on this. Like not exact same problem, but I was wondering if it was the same thing. What happened with me was I have Tailwind through Webpacker, right? And if you're using the purge stuff, then it will obviously purge things, but it monitors what files you're changing and the JIT rebuilds it. If you're not running the Webpack dev server, you can edit the HTML and it's just not going to recompile the Tailwind CSS. So like when you add background pink 500 and you haven't used it anywhere else, nothing happens because it doesn't exist and it didn't trigger a recompile. And it's not exactly related or whatever, but like I started going down the rabbit hole of like, did the file recompile? And the files that Webpacker generates when you're compiling inline without the dev server, they just get put into public packs, I believe, which uses the static file server, which isn't going to include any no cache headers or anything. So like, as far as I know, that's a big important thing to hint at the browser not to cache the file because it's just going to do it by default. And those content hashes are really important for those pieces. And I ended up fixing, what did I have it do? I did a change to the Webpack watch folders or something and told it just to watch all the views or to use them as like the node modules folder. So it like searches that, but it also monitors that to recompile anytime HTML changes, which fixes the inline stuff, but it's kind of slow that way because don't always need to recompile, but there's no real good balance between having the JIT and triggering the recompiles or whatever without that. But I was thinking maybe it was the same issue of the file gets served, but I'm using Chrome, so it was a little different. Like it doesn't seem to cache it like Safari does, but yeah, that is a rabbit hole to go down. Easily lose
fix that.
Several hours.
It's not great. Here's the thing. Tailwind, now that they have JIT stuff, you can compile on demand with the Tailwind CLI, or the node module has a bin sub. It's not called a bin sub, but it's a bin sub that lets you run Tailwind CSS commands. And now you can pass in, you can tell it to use JIT and to look at your config and to watch these folders, and then it will compile it for you. So no Webpacker. You could do that in development where you would have you don't need that hash, that integrity hash in development, right? You can. There are benefits to doing it. You don't have to. but you can have Tailwind continually spitting out your CSS into that public folder that you then load like normally. And then for a production build, you just let Webpacker build it for you. I'm not saying it's a great solution, but it is what you could do.
It's interesting.
Would that require you to run another process for that?
Yes.
Running the Webpack dev server fixes my issue, but it's when you're not, it's real strange to have Webpacker not recompile when you add a new thing. But it was also weird too, because I'm pretty sure that my Tailwind config has purge set to only do it when node env is production or staging or whatever.
Yeah,
Maybe I wasn't.
But it defaults to node env production. So if it's not getting set anywhere.
Yeah, and it's probably not mirroring the Rails env and like copying that over to node env if it's missing. So maybe that was part of it too. But so anyways, those tangents, back to Jason.
No, this is all relevant. I ended up, I don't know their name, but we'll call them T27 Duck from the GoRails Discord. Shout out Tony. Was actually in some of these PRs I saw around Webpacker and had, we'll call it a solution for this problem, where basically I have this like custom setup.
Shaking his head right now, audience.
Yeah, I don't even know how to describe it.
He looks ashamed.
In development, I bring in this thing that will basically add content hash back to the file names. But I didn't just stop there. I was like, I'm going to go back to Vite then now that I know what the problem is. So I scrapped the app, went back, could not figure out how to fix it. Went back to web. Like I lost a whole day just trying to get Safari to work. The next day, I just rolled with Tony's solution and just let it be. And it was great. Like everything just worked. I do like Webpacker 6. We've talked about that before. I like that it chunks by default. I love just-in-time Tailwind. But damn, I'm really tired of thinking about build tooling.
Yes. It's funny though, like it's a lot more complicated now, but we still had a ton of issues back in the asset pipeline. jQuery Rails has a compiled copy of jQuery like in the Ruby gem. And remember the Rails assets site that would generate Ruby gems for JavaScript libraries? It sounds so funny, but like they weren't great either. I don't know if this whole time there's ever been a good solution for asset management in Rails. It doesn't feel like it, at least.
I don't feel like there's a solution anywhere though. I feel like it's all screwed up and everyone's trying to figure out like a way to make it better. To their credit, there are a lot of smart people trying to figure this out. But at the end of the day, like this is a hard problem for whatever reason. I don't understand why, but this is hard. I mean, well, code is hard. JavaScript is hard.
The dependency chain is also very deep in JavaScript. That doesn't make it any easier.
Right. That makes your import maps really tough.
Oh,
yeah. I was thinking last night that I used to complain about how long Sprockets took to compile assets, and I just feel like such an idiot. That was before we were using, but not like some of the things I do with Webpack. So
I was just working on a Sprockets issue right before here. We made a new app, no Sprockets. We pulled in a gem, required Sprockets. Our things isn't working. All of a sudden, we're like, is this a Sprockets issue? And it was. I don't know why, but it was.
Yeah, man, the esbuild Rails and other approaches that are coming out right now with DHH's latest stuff is fascinating to see, basically using esbuild to dump the files into the asset pipeline to have the asset pipeline serve up stuff. And I'm like, you know what? This is pretty interesting. Like we're kind of going back to what we had, but with the modern build tools, which is nice. I'm just happy that like, because I feel like a lot of the speed, and I don't know for sure really, because I've never really looked into it, but I feel like Babel has been a nightmare for compiling assets and stuff. And with the let's just use the ES6 that the browser supports, and we don't have to convert your JavaScript to something that is supported. That is very nice. I think being able to do the Importmap Rails for Turbo and Stimulus that have hardly any dependencies is fantastic. Like that's super cool that you can just like, boom, code that you write is a code that runs in the browser. That was the days, right? We haven't done that since CoffeeScript became like the default, and then it became Babel and whatever. And I don't really want my Ruby to be compiled into some other thing that runs in production because it's different and a lot harder to debug stuff when it's been like converted. And I don't want the JavaScript to have to do that either. And it'll be faster to compile everything and bundle it up for production. So yeah, I'm optimistic, but I don't know. I'm very hesitant at the same time. We have had so many struggles with assets for years.
Yeah, I'm really like, for whatever reason, like I'm not in like a huge JavaScript rabbit hole, but I do like working React and like stuff like that. So I didn't find when it was like Rails 7, Importmap, this is it. I wasn't super enthused by that. But like you said, if you're just firing up Stimulus, Hotwire, like it's great. Like I get the reasoning behind it. But when he was like, oh, here's esbuild Rails, I was like, now my interest is piqued because that's what Phoenix just swapped to for 1.6. They got rid of Webpack and they're like, the way the esbuild works with there, you actually don't even have to have Node installed on your computer unless you want to add custom like esbuild configs. So I'm scared to try again, but part of me does want to like fire up another app and just see if I get esbuild working because it's so fascinating.
I mean,
you just need to do it
is what runs Vite and Snowpack under the hood. So
right.
Yeah.
I mean, DHH basically just went straight to the core and stuff. Like I was like, oh, maybe he'll choose one of these two, but no, he just went to the underlying technology, which I think is smart, especially if like everyone's using that. Let's figure out how to make that work in Rails.
So do you think this makes sense that esbuild Rails spits out the final file in the asset pipeline in like a esbuild folder under assets or whatever? Because those should just be .js files. Do you think that's just going to be serving up? Basically, Sprockets will just have to like generate the content hash, put it in the URL and do what it's good at, serving that up and not have to, maybe it does compression or whatever when it deploys to production, but it should be very minimal, I would assume, that the asset pipeline has responsibility over.
That's how I anticipate it working. It's like esbuild does the heavy lifting and Sprockets does what Sprockets has known how to do for 10 years.
Right. Yeah, because I think I'm the same way as you. Like the import map stuff is interesting, but the problem is when you build anything more complex. Like if you're Basecamp and you have good JavaScript engineers that can write everything from scratch and you don't really have any dependencies, then I think that makes a lot of sense. But when you get into, you need to pull in React and 30 other React libraries, they're all going to have these dependencies that may or may not conflict version wise. And they used to be in Webpacker. Okay, this can have version whatever of the same library that this other package has, a different version of that. And it's not going to care. Although that's an interesting thing that Bundlers kind of says, look, you should use the same supported versions between these, like a single dependency instance of that instead of JavaScript where we're like, whatever, let the rabbit hole go as deep as it needs to. That is maybe part of why it's so complex between the two. But it is interesting because I would imagine that the import map stuff is optimistic and early. And those dependency version conflicts, I don't know of a way to say, here's the versions with it. It's just kind of like, here's stimulus. You get whatever stimulus version this was. So I think esbuild would be a good alternative to that. And you can maybe mix and match, right? Like one of the nice things is Webpacker never had a good option for engines. So like Madman, Spinna, any other engine that might have JavaScript and CSS that it needs to ship. It's not a great way to do that with Webpacker. And there's like very interesting hacks of like edit your parent applications configs to point to the gem locations. And that was not a smooth thing. So it sounds like Spinna is already up to date with Importmap Rails, which is sweet. So they can have their JavaScript and dependencies and everything kind of just spit out right there. That's nice. And I'm assuming the esbuild stuff can maybe be about the same. because he has now a rake task in there that will run esbuild just like Webpacker enhances the asset compile command. So that should be hopefully about the same, where your gem can say, hey, let's run this esbuild stuff, and it gets dumped out in your app assets folder somewhere. So in theory, both of those should help the gem engine stuff.
Yeah.
If you're listening to this podcast, then who's making sure that your application is running correctly? Is the app up? Are bugs plaguing your users? Do your cron jobs execute correctly? I don't have to worry about this because I have a secret weapon, Honeybadger. Honeybadger works with my unique workflow, is easy to set up on all my projects, and gives me peace of mind throughout the day. The best part is that Honeybadger has all the tools I need in an easy to understand UI with excellent documentation. I want to build features, not waste time trying to configure my tools, and Honeybadger provides that for me out of the box. Sign up for Honeybadger today and let them know we sent you. Thanks to Honeybadger for their continued support of the show.
The one thing with esbuild, I just don't know. Like I read on the Phoenix docs that like one of the esbuild plugins you can use is like for handling CSS, because to my knowledge, Tailwind Rails, THH's gem, doesn't handle just in time.
Right. I don't think so.
And so there is still part of me like now there's something like Andrew was saying, I could build something that just uses the bin stub, but there's a way to get esbuild to do that all for me.
And that was what came up right away after the esbuild Rails thing video was published, because it was like, hey, if you have an npm build script in your package JSON, we can run that. And so I think that's going to be automated, where it's going to automatically try and do that. So in theory, yes, because the Tailwind CSS Rails gem was written with the intention of having no, and so is Importmap Rails, I think. The intention is not having Node on your system, like not running anything. Just have the Tailwind CSS giant file and let Ruby do the purging instead of the built-in Node Tailwind CSS purge stuff. I don't really mind having Node installed when I deploy and running stuff through it. So that is...
Well, it's about to get a lot worse now that Docker's going to start charging.
But they're only charging for like companies of 250 employees or higher or whatever.
Well, I mean, come on.
And if
I can't use Docker anymore was the point of that statement. So it becomes difficult at that point where like you have to go back to the old ways. Node sucks. Node sucks to manage.
Yeah.
And every other version breaks.
Yeah, it's another dependency. It's always better not to have them if you can, but I don't know. It's hard not to have it if you want to install packages directly from NPM, like you're used to doing with Bundler. You kind of have to do something.
Importing packages with like, when we could start using the import syntax in ES6, those just change JavaScript for me. I still don't want to do all my work in JavaScript, but I don't mind it. My problem is just, how do I make this not so messy? And bleh.
Yeah, I'm with you on those. I'm with you. The classes and stuff finally being fully supported make a big difference for organizing stuff. And JavaScript has gotten better as a language, but it's still got a long ways to go. And then it just makes you appreciate what we've got with Bundler and all that. It's very well done and very well organized. The only thing I wish Bundler or Ruby gems supported was namespaces like npm, like @rails/active storage. There's so many gems that have been abandoned at this point that like, if you're trying to come up with a new gem name, good luck. It can be really tough to find something that's not taken. And it would be so much easier if you could just say @username/whatever and use the name you actually wanted. That would be nice. But yeah,
that
maybe one day.
Orgs, when you have an organization where you're like, if you fork stuff, and you make it very clear, hey, this is our fork of this thing with namespaces and stuff like that. Instead of the junior joins the team and they're scrolling through the README like, where's this fork? What is this? And then you have to find it. And what if it's one of the engineers who's made like their own fork of it? And it's, wait, what are we doing, guys? Hold on.
Yeah. It's a tough problem too with like, if these people disappear and don't really maintain stuff and you can't get a hold of them, you can't really transfer ownership of the gem or the repo or whatever. That makes it tough. So yeah, it is. It would just be nice if we could have orgs or usernames or whatever. That name spacing would help, I think. But that's probably the only real thing that I feel like could use an enhancement. I'm sure that's much easier said than done to implement too.
Have you guys set who your GitHub repos will be given to in the event of your...
I don't know if I did, but I should. Just give it to
you
THH.
definitely should. Just give it to THH. I'm pretty sure...
You started all this.
No,
it's your problem now.
I entered mine as a joke, and I feel like it might be all going to Andrea. I'm not going to lie.
That should be our combined goal, is just to overwhelm Andrea on any one of our deaths.
In the event of our untimely demise, Andrea will be getting a ton of repos.
Yeah, I've been looking through this esbuild Rails source code, and there's just not much to it. That's kind of nice.
Yeah, it is. It is super nice. We don't want it to do much. That became the thing with Webpacker, that like version 6 is like, okay, hold up. We're not going to have commands to install React and Vue and whatever that may change every week. The gem can't change at the same pace. So we'll just put it in the docs and the README. Like that, I think was a good move, because when your library starts to take over too much of that, you can't maintain it, you know? And yeah, esbuild looks like basically rake tests, 2 rake tests. And that's about all the logic that's there.
Yeah. And I'm like on the esbuild site now looking at CSS and like JSX and stuff. And it doesn't seem like it's that much.
Once you get it working, I will say it's the same thing with Snowpack too. Once you get it working on something, the rest just works. It's really pretty easy to move from like those ecosystems are really good. So once you get one thing working and you understand how it works, getting the rest of it working is not that hard.
These are bold claims.
Andrew's advice of once you get it working, it works is
if you just get it to work, it will work. I can promise you this.
Until it doesn't work, and then it doesn't work. And
then you got to fix it.
Yeah. So I guess the thing here, saying I want to put Tailwind into esbuild, if I wanted to use esbuild Rails, I guess I would just need to spit the CSS file into the asset pipeline for CSS, because it looks like esbuild only does it for JavaScript.
Yeah, I'm curious about that, because that was going to be my question. Because the other thing that happened was that Sass is being removed from Rails 7.
I was going to ask you about that.
And my like recent deploy with Tailwind, I noticed like Dart Sass is complaining about Tailwind classes that are like, we're using something that's going to be deprecated or whatever. So it's really interesting that Rails is getting rid of that. I forgot about it because I use CSS through Webpacker right now, but I can't imagine going back to plain CSS. I use the nesting. The only thing that I would hate is I don't use variables and a lot of these other things that you can get from SCSS or Sass, but like the nesting, oh my God, the nesting I like could not get away with not having.
There's a W3C, or maybe not, the working group, the CSS working group has a proposal now for CSS native nesting. And I use nesting. If I do it, I use it with post CSS.
Yeah.
If you're using like the component, like sidecar asset thing, then I feel like then it becomes like a thing where you could just use CSS. Mm-hmm. If all of your assets are scoped to components and stuff, then all of a sudden using just plain CSS could work with like CSS variables.
Yeah. Definitely could. I need to dive into some more of that stuff again. Yeah, I think it'll be nice if we can get esbuild running the Tailwind compile or whatever. Maybe there's got to be some sort of thing with the inline build like Webpacker does for compiling assets and development. I don't even know actually how that gets wired in, but if you can get that set up and esbuild can launch these processes or whatever for you for production deployments, this could be nice. Could be real nice.
With Tailwind, I wonder if it'll almost be easier to make esbuild just run the Tailwind commands instead of even worrying about the CSS at all. Like
I think that was the intention of
normal CSS. But yeah, that seems smart.
So like when you install esbuild Rails, it copies over a package JSON with a scripts build line in it that just runs esbuild. So you could like add your own Tailwind, ampersand, Tailwind, and you're good to go. So I think that's the intention of how it will work or whatever. Like you just tack in your own stuff. So yeah, I like that.
Because then you can run Babel if you want. Yeah.
If you so desire.
If one were to do that. Yeah. Just at that point, you might as well, never mind. TypeScript. How did y'all feel when Sass got removed? Y'all aren't old. I joke that y'all are old. Y'all aren't old, but like you guys wrote infinitely more Sass than I've ever written. Because when I was joining, Sass was on the decline.
I mean, I use Tailwind all the time now, so I don't write a lot of Sass anymore. So I wouldn't want to go back to just plain CSS yet. So I'd probably put Sass back in for what I do.
You don't think you just use post CSS?
Yeah, I don't even really.
You do.
I mean, this is the funny thing. Like,
Sass.
Yeah, and that may be the thing, right? Like post CSS might be perfect, but I just know that Tailwind uses post CSS, and I don't even really know what post CSS does itself. So, yeah,
it's the Babel for CSS, bro. I'm not lying. That's a really great way to think about it. It adds all these features that don't exist in CSS.
Well, all those little like full screen, and then there's the browser specific tags and whatever.
Right. When it has that post CSS env thing, just like Babel has that env thing where it uses browser lists to figure out what to compile it to. And then the biggest difference between Sass and post CSS is like Sass is like one package, one thing. It's all in there versus post CSS is very modular. Because when I use post CSS with Tailwind, I don't do nesting. I don't do any of that stuff. I don't care. But then if I want to, I can just add post CSS nesting. And then there's this post CSS font stuff. And then there's all this stuff with post CSS you can do, but it's just like Babel where you just pick the thing you want and add it in.
Nice. Yeah. I mean, I was invited to be Andrew M. Codes' successor on GitHub. Oh no. Oh no.
Live on the podcast.
I'm accepting.
Yes.
And then I can archive all your projects the minute I get access to them.
Yeah, please do. I talked to some other Rails developers. Really,
all I want to do when I inherit your stuff is do is yank all of the gems and just cause hella havoc for you.
People, not that many. Well, I'll be dead, so it won't be panic for me.
Well, your goal now is to make something super important so that when you're dead, it just causes crazy havoc afterwards. Like you want to get in the history books, and this is an easy way to do it. You took down all of Ruby or something.
Okay. All right. I'm going to need to make a new gem called Runway, and it's going to be a copy of Rails, but Andrew's flavor. All right. Okay. I can do this.
Well, this was actually like, Andrew, you about to say something before I'm trying to land the plane?
I was just going to say people need to be open-minded about removing Sass. A lot of older developers, they're not happy about Sass getting removed, bro.
Yeah. Well, if post CSS can do it and it's not a pain in the butt to set up, then great. I think that was the nice part that people liked about Sass was you install it and you're done. One of the weird things about the modularization of stuff is like you now are forced to learn about each one of the packages individually. And it's like just more overhead for you to put in your brain. So I understand like the aversion to some of those changes or whatever, because it is now more, it's like Docker, like now all of the DevOps work is in your hands as well. Whereas Heroku was like, don't worry about it. We'll figure it out for the most part. As long as you follow our rules, we've got, and Docker was like, hey, what if we give you all the DevOps responsibility as well? That sounds great. And you're like, but I just barely got my app running in development. How the hell am I going to do it for production?
Yeah, the Docker dream sounded a lot better 3 years ago, I'll just say. But my point was saying that though is you can put Sass back in, like it's not gone forever. I feel like there's a lot of changes right now happening in Rails, and I feel like some people are kind of like digging their heels in a little bit because it kind of feels like the rug's being yanked out. Like all of a sudden there's all these new tools, and the kids like me are like, oh yeah, why are you using like that when you could do it like this? And that's kind of annoying, right? I know that's annoying, but at the end of the day, it's like, these are like, if it doesn't work for you, don't use it. Don't get on Twitter and just blast your opinions about it. You know, some of us
go back to Rails 1 where you belong.
Yeah. God, Rails 1 people.
Go back to Scriptaculous.
What is that?
Or Prototype JS.
No. Are we
These are-
regressing?
These are
Back,
histories that you never experienced.
It's reverse evolution.
We use Sass at work, but I haven't used Sass in a side project in so long. Yeah, I'm not too concerned, and we can put it back. But this was good, though. This was good to think about this out loud because it feels like DHH has released a new build tool for Rails like every day this week. And I've just been I've been putting them out of my head. So it was good to talk about all this. But esbuild, that's the thing. Like, I'm really interested tonight. Like, I'm going to go try and make life happen with it. Thanks for coming to the TED Talk.
Remember to set your Pomodoro timer so that you don't waste 9 hours tonight on it.
Yeah, right.
You need to set your cap, right?
One.
Let's also talk about if I was just using Chrome, I would have never dealt with that at all.
Okay, no. I won't take Safari slander. That's where I draw the line.
But you wouldn't have known that Safari was broken, though, right? That's not good either.
Broken. It's doing what it's supposed to be doing.
It's not broken in Safari rather than Safari being broken.
Right.
Safari gets a lot of hate.
Like, it's good to know that, right? Because if guess what? If it gets to production and it doesn't work in Safari, things are going to be not great.
They're going to be pretty awkward, actually.
That's the problem. Is I think it still works in production.
Well,
yeah, probably.
Then it's just development.
It's just development. It doesn't generate those hashes.
I mean,
put them back in.
You need to go to WWDC, find Tim Cook, and have a few words with him on our behalf.
On it.
I'll come.
I'm on it.
I'll come with you.
Listen, I was talking
and
to
give me some AirPods while you're at it.
I was talking to my friends.
I need to.
Chris and Andrew. I don't know if you know them, but they're a pretty big deal in the Ruby community. And I'm going to need you to fix this bug right now.
Yeah.
Dan,
And then
do you have any coupon codes for AirPods?
You got any free stuff on here? I mean, it's a long drive, you know.
Yeah. Also, I just paid $1,000 for WWDC. So.
So if I could get a refund, that'd be great.
What a slap in the face.
All right, I gotta go. This was good, and maybe next week all our JavaScript problems will be solved. It'll be time to talk Ruby again.
That's on you, man. That is all on you.
Ruby in a while, it feels like, honestly, depressing.
I haven't really.
If you don't come back with good news, like we may be down to 2 hosts. Like,
oh no, we need to change our name to the Webpacker podcast.
The I don't know what to do with my assets podcast.
It is really.
There's some good puns you can make there.
It is just such a pain point.
Isn't it? It's frustrating.
It's like Ruby is still just working for me, and Rails is still just working for me. But trying to make, I don't know. Blech.
Yep.
Well,
until next week when everything is fixed.
Yes. And if it's not fixed, someone's at fault, and we'll find out who.
Yeah, Tim Cook.
Yeah, Jason, let me know when you want to head up there.
Yeah, I'll let you know.
Okay.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
Bye.